Shakir. Your team. Our pizza. Picasso's. Order online today at picassospizza.net.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports Podcast, where we are here to pay the bills. What an apt opening for this show. Let's bring the guests in here first. We got Mike Bundt. We got Carson Hayek. Guys, Khalil Shakir still here. Like we predict the future at Trainwreck Sports. I'm just saying. I have another example later. We'll get to it. But we predict the future. This ad ran in the playoffs. Khalil Shakir still here. And the big news of the day, Khalil Shakir signs an extension with the Buffalo Bills. 4 years, $60 million, 32 guaranteed. Mike Bundt, let's start with you, buddy. You saw the Shakir news come across your feed today. What were your initial thoughts, and how do you feel now 5 hours later?
Yeah, I was thrilled. I was happy. We've been talking a little bit the last couple months about the group of five, which guys the Bills should extend and give them another contract. And I think Khalil Shakir was near the top of all of our lists. Him and Benford were my two top guys, at least in the last month, that I thought should deserve extensions. And I'm happy about this. He's 25 years old. He's already been with the team for 3 years. Former fifth-round pick has really developed into a premier slot receiver in the NFL. I think he has the ability to grow even more from what he has been. I see 1,000-yard receiver potential for him, a guy that can be one of the top slot receivers in the entire NFL. He's versatile. He's dependable. He's great with the football in his hands after the catch. I was so thrilled, and I know the money aspect is something that a lot of people have been discussing. I think it's a perfectly fair deal. It's actually beneath some of the offseason projections that certain sites had for him. And with the cap going up as much as it is, his percentage hit is similar to guys like Gabe Davis. And I believe I saw Darnell Mooney and less than Jerry Jeudy. So this is going to end up being, I believe, a great value long-term as well.
Yeah, I think you touched on it. He's a guy who he's gotten better each year.
Yep.
Even during his rookie year, you saw those flash plays. Last year, he became more consistent, especially down that playoff run. And this year, he was the guy, I think, at wide receiver. And he's a guy who I think still has so much growth still to go. I think he's a guy who's you're gonna look back at this deal in 2, maybe 3 years, maybe even next year, and be like, wow, that's a really, really good signing by Brandon Beane for what the contract's worth. And he's a guy who's you build a culture around. He does everything well for you. He run blocks. He can punt return, kick return if you need to. He does everything you ask, and that's definitely what you want in a culture. And I think he fits Buffalo to a T. And I'm thrilled with that contract. I think that's good for both sides. Definitely a little bit below the projections, but that's a very, very high upside deal. He's in the prime of his career. So I'm really happy for him. He deserved it. So that's good, hard-earned money, and we'll see how it goes from here. But I think the sky's the limit for him.
I couldn't agree more, guys. I mean, we're lockstep. We knew that they wanted to get this deal done. We knew how important getting this kind of deal was for the Bills' offense, and just the kind of piece he was. Like we talked at length about the game against Baltimore earlier in the season this year, the loss on Sunday Night Football, right? And a lot of the reasons we came down to what went wrong was Khalil Shakir got hurt, right? Like we put a lot of onus into that. It wasn't all that in that game, but that shows even 5 weeks into the season how important all of us on this panel thought this guy was to the key to the offense and their offensive success later in the year. And clearly that the organization feels the same. Now the deal itself is he is slotted in between for average. I believe I saw this. That he's slotted in between Cortland Sutton and Tyler Lockett. He's making about $15 million per. It's essentially a 2-year deal. It's $32 million guaranteed at signing. So his first 2 years are basically guaranteed right away. And then they'll probably re-explore an extension in a couple years if all things go well. But you usually, if someone I can't remember who made this point, so apologies on this, but someone made the great point. Like usually with these agent deals, like the sticker shock is more than what it actually is, right? And you see that sticker come on the timeline today and you're like, Wait, it's up to 15 million per year. Wait, it's 60 million max. I think Shakir did them a solid here. And we're going to talk about if it relates to James Cook or not, but I think Shakir, if he wanted to, could have went to the open market, and maybe he's not making like 25 million per year or anything like that. But if he had another productive year, could he have gotten $20 million per year next year? Probably. I mean, I think he could have at least asked for it. The projections, I think Spot Track had him around 17 and a half. I think our friend Greg Thompson at Cover One had him at like 18.5 or something like that, some kind of that value. So a lot of these projections, he falls underneath, and not by a substantial margin, $2.5 million per year. That allows so much cap flexibility for this team. Hopefully, I mean, we haven't seen the cap I don't think we've seen the cap ramifications for this upcoming off season yet, where that lays. I'm sure we will in the next couple of days, but you have to imagine they make this move to free up some money this year and get more flexibility down the line. And we knew, as Bundt talked about, there was going to be a lot of guys up for extensions. It was a big topic the last week with all the James Cook chatter, but we knew Shakir was one of those guys. It's like, all right, where is he in line to get paid? And I think he got first in line because he said, listen, I'll keep this easy for you guys. We want to keep Cook around. We want to keep this band together. So what can I do to help? And I think he did that. I think that's what this is. And I think you only get that by having Josh Allen as your quarterback. That helps. Any receiver who's looking at making this kind of deal is like, well, I have this guy at quarterback. Am I really going to have it better anywhere else? Let's find a way to make me stay. But be the culture the Bills have instilled, what Sean McDermott's done, everything else. For a guy to make this move in the prime of his career and leave money, any amount of money on the table, I'm pro. Like, that's the thing with the James Cook argument, and I keep bringing him up. We'll talk about him later. Is like, I'm pro players trying to go get their money. Any sport, anything. Like, that's what you have to do. You're dealing with billionaire owners. Go get your money. Go do whatever you want. So to have a guy who theoretically could have had a bigger sticker, more guaranteed money, bigger sticker shock to his deal, whatever else, to kind of look at that. And it's just kind of been Khalil Shakir's deal since he showed up. So I love the move. It's perfect for the Bills. It's perfect for what they needed now. Shakir's still getting paid a good amount. He can still get a good payday in his age 27 year in a couple years if he wants to extend that later on. But he said, I'll play with the MVP for the next couple years, and I'll take $15 million to do that. That's a good deal. And I think he's smart in doing that. And like you said, he's found this role in this offense. I don't know if he's ever going to be a superstar, but if he's Wes Welker for Josh Allen's Tom Brady or Julian Edelman, or a better version of that, even potentially, I don't know if he could be. I don't know if that's blasphemous or not. But if he's that guy, then he's vital, and they need to keep him around. And I think we've seen that Josh Allen needs one of those guys. So I love the move from all sides. Everybody involved, I think, won today. Yeah,
absolutely. And I look at Shakir. I loved Cole Beasley for Josh early in his career because of what he provided. He was always open, Mr. Dependable. And I think that Khalil Shakir has the ability to be a better slot receiver than what Cole Beasley even was. Beasley was great, amazing route runner, always finding the open spots, good at reading coverage. But what have we seen Shakir do throughout his career? He's been versatile. You can line him up in different areas. That versatility is really a big strength for him because you can put him in different spots. His catch rate has been high. I know catch rate is more of a product of offense and getting catchable passes. Obviously, a lot of it's determined by the quarterback there. But when you're catching near 80% plus of your throws intended to you at certain points, that's incredible. He had something like 25, 26 consecutive catches on targets at one point, I think, at one point. So Shakir has 1,000-yard potential. Is he ever going to be the number one receiver on the team? Probably not. Like, even as a slot, like, his production might be the number one production on the team, but you're always going to have that other guy that you're going to want to balance things out. But I think that's perfectly okay. Having a premier slot receiver is something that defenses are going to have to take account for every time they match up against you. If you can find a way to have get another good outside receiver, pair it up with him, you're going to be dangerous. And that also opens things up for the running attack going forward too. So I think this is the move that had to happen. And we've been talking about receiver a lot in the last year, ever since Stephon Diggs left. And it's ironic that a fifth rounder, and now when Stephon Diggs was a fifth rounder, is now the guy that is the top receiver on the Bills. And We'll see how long that is. If they address receiver at all this offseason, I still think they need to. But it's good to know that for at least the next 4 years of Josh Allen's prime, that he's going to have someone that he has a lot of continuity with, a lot of comfort with. And I think this is going to help keep Josh Allen at a premier level too, because the last thing you want when you have a quarterback getting into his late 20s, early 30s is to be flip-flopping receivers for him all the time. So this is going to help ensure that each season going forward, he's at least going to have a higher comfort level with his group of guys on a year-by-year basis.
For sure. I mean, the slot wide receiver position, I think, is one of the most overlooked positions in football. It makes the quarterback's job so much easier. And you talked about a Bundt. He plays all sorts of different positions. You could see in the RPO game, the Bills loved that this year. He was the man of the hour when Curtis Samuel wasn't the one, in orbit motions or things like that. But the quick screen game, the RPO game, the run blocking game, I mean, you throw Khalil anywhere, he makes your offense better. And I think that's crucial to have him locked up for the next 4 or 5 years. So that's an important signing. I love to see the extension. And once again, he's just a guy that you need 11 Khalil Shakir. You would love to have 11 Khalil Shakirs in your position. So I'm happy for him. I think Josh Allen's going to love this signing. Brandon Beane loves this signing. And it's just another good move by the management.
And selfishly, we also love it from a train wreck.
Of course. He's one of the biggest train wreck lovers ever
that we've had with him in the past. So obviously a little bit biased. I mean, you saw the commercial to start the show. We have a little bit of a tie to Khalil Shakir, but he's definitely deserving of this. And with how important the skill positions are in the NFL now, I think if you went in the 90s, you would say, well, do you really need a $15 million wide receiver? Maybe the answer would have been no at that point in time. I know money. Obviously,
money has changed. I know. I tried to look up Welker and Edelman's like contracts to even compare, and it's like it pales in comparison to all.
Yeah. So like even if you like adjust for inflation, all that stuff, but with the game, the way the game is right now, obviously the trenches is the most important spot. That's always going to be the most important spot in football behind quarterback. But wide receiver, corner, those are very key, and that's why I've always thought that Shakir and Benford should be the 1 and 2 guys that they target to extend.
Yeah, Benford was the top of my list, so I wonder if that is. I mean, the way that the Bills work too, like the way that they announce these things, the way they do their PR with these things is very calculated. Like it's very much. This deal could have been agreed to last week for all we know, and the Bills were like, "We're going to announce this when Brandon Beane shows up to the combine." That's what we're gonna leak this to the league when Brandon Beane shows up. The Bills are tight-lipped. Like a lot of leaks don't get out from this organization. A lot of the leaks that do get out are very calculated when they do it. So I think that we could get news in the coming days, more roster news from the Bills, whether it be further extensions, whether it be restructures, whether it be a guy who gets cut that maybe we're not expecting, because there have been a couple of those the last couple of days from some teams. I know the Browns cutting Thornhill, and there's been some surprises the last couple of days. Like the news cycle is starting up as these GMs, as these coaches all file into Indianapolis this week, and they're all going to their same spot. I can't remember, St. Elmo's, whatever that place is where they get the shrimp cocktail that they always talk about.
Hey, my wife will talk all about it. She's from Indiana, so she'll talk all about it.
There we go. Well, I need some St. Elmo's in my life at some point.
And I think a lot of this too, it's getting out in front of things early. It's a lot. You brought up James Cook. Obviously, his contract's going to be a big topic of discussion. But I don't even know if this is about James Cook. I really wouldn't connect that to this. I would say more. We all know what the Bills' issue in the playoffs has been in recent years. It's been their defensive line not being able to step up when the job matters the most. There's a lot of defensive linemen, both interior and on the edge right now, that are rumored to be available this offseason. At first, we were talking all about Myles Garrett and Max Crosby, but in recent times, names like Jonathan Allen have been brought up, Trey Hendrickson. And whether or not you say it's more interior problems with the Bills or edge, either way, they need to find a way to get more pressure in big moments. And even if you think interior is the way to go, I really just want to get an impact player on the line, regardless of where it's at, for the best value for the team, to where we can still continue to address other positions. getting a move like this out of the way early and then even saving a little bit of money on it, it gives you more time to come up with a plan or strategy to go out there and be aggressive and take your shot. Because maybe you don't get a chance at Myles Garrett. Maybe Cleveland decides we're going to hold on to him. But you still have a chance at some of these other guys now, and you can start coming up, formulating that plan once you really have your own guys figured out. And internally, they might already know which guys that they want to lock up and which guys they're willing to move on from if they don't get to a certain point with them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And let's talk about that D-line a little bit, Mike. Let's jump to there before we get into Cook, because it was mentioned today. Jonathan Allen can explore trades. They've kind of come to a mutual understanding here that he can go out, look for his trades, probably wants an extension. He's going into the last year of his deal, coming off an injury. But that's the kind of guy. Last night, guys, I was on here streaming on Madden. I traded for Jonathan Allen. I was like, I need a D-tap. I was like, this D-line is not doing shit for me in game one. Need to get somebody in here. Need a big boy in the middle. Jonathan Allen came up. I was like, don't think I'd be able to get him for the Bills, but let's go. Let's do this. We're in a virtual world. Let's go. And then I wake up and see that this morning. That's the kind of guy. But you're right. Any impact player on the D-line would be. I mean, if they go to trade for Myles Garrett, I'm going to be on here singing their praises and very excited about it. But I truly believe the interior is where they need to is more of the sore spot along that D-line. I'm not as high on Ed Oliver as I was in the years past. Daquan Jones is getting older. It's expecting a lot from Carter to be an impact player stepping in next year. I really think if they got a guy like Allen, when he's healthy and when he's at his peak, now the health is the biggest factor going right now into this. That's the kind of guy they need that they have never had under Sean McDermott, in my opinion, next to Ed Oliver. Oliver's had, and I think Oliver will, if he has a guy like, and I know that I'm not saying Oliver is like this superstar just because you need to put a guy when you put a guy next to him, because that he's an above average player who will benefit from another above average player next to him. I think Daquan Jones was that in the past and was able to get to that point. And it's just, you can't expect that from a guy in age 34, age 33, age 34. He can still be productive. He'll still give you good reps, but we're talking like consistent every down defensive tackle. They've missed that. And especially a guy like Allen who's so versatile along the D-line. But it really does feel like that's where, like, and it's a great point here by Joey. I would love Kenneth Grant. Don't get me started on that guy. That's my dream right there. Get him up to 400, get him eating some wings when he gets in here, and let's go. But this is a draft that's really deep on the D-line, and it works well because if I were the Bills, I mean, depending on what the receiver situation turns out to be, via trade, via free agency, whatever that may be, I just use those first 3 picks on D linemen. I'm not even joking. Like, I think we saw from Philly what you can, like, you need hockey lines of defensive linemen at this point. If you really want to be like, if you really want it to be max pressure, you want to get the most out of it. The Bills love to rotate their pass rushers too. We know this. We know that they love to have these different units of guys coming in and out. They just don't have the dogs for it right now. So I think whether it's a big splash, whether it's investing through the draft and doing it through that way, I think the D-line, I've come around, is the number one priority. Whatever they do with it, it just has to be addressed in a meaningful way. And then I would go to cornerback and wide receiver after you get that done. So I'm hoping that the Shakir move is impetus for a big move in that direction. And that's where the Bills have realized they need to build up. But we'll see, man. Brandon Beaton, he said today he's not afraid to make a splash, not afraid to trade that first rounder. That could mean anything. I think that could mean a receiver. I think that could mean a defensive line. It could mean a corner. I think they'll do it for anybody. I think they're going to do it for a talented player, whether it's going to be a position of need. I'm not so sure of right now. I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, it's tough because when you have a draft that is perceived to be as good at defensive line as this one is, you'd say, well, maybe let's double dip. Let's get as many as we can. But to me, when you're picking late first round, late second round, you're not getting the cream of the crop. Now, even if you're getting a guy that maybe has a first round grade late where the Bills are picking, is that a guy that's going to come in and be a star right away, be a game wrecker right away? I don't know. I look at that as maybe a guy that maybe 2 years from now is an impact player. The Bills Super Bowl window is right now. And when I look at it, it's okay in recent like 2, 3, 4 years ago to say, okay, we're building for 2 years from now. We're building for 3 years from now. When you're like projecting like what's Josh Allen going to be at 27, 28, 29 years old. But right now he is 28 and he's going to be 29. And I can't be drafting to get guys for when he's 31, 32 to be good. Now, if there is a way to get some of these defensive linemen while making a move for a proven guy, I'm absolutely for that, where you can help out your current situation and build for the future. But I don't know if that's really going to be possible. If you're going after a premier guy like Myles Garrett or Jonathan Allen, you're going to have to give up some decent picks in return, and then you're really left with later mid-round picks to get after guys. So I still think, number one, they have to get a proven commodity on their defensive line. The toughest part I have right now with this Bills defensive line is that they have put a lot of assets into it over the years, and it just hasn't worked out. You give Von Miller a big contract, and at the time, it looked like it was going to work out great early on, but he unfortunately tears his ACL, and then you have an older version of himself that can't even play 40, 50% of the snaps anymore. And yeah, he still has good metrics, but what did those metrics mean if you're only playing 30% of the snaps on a weekly basis? Daquan Jones, we gave an extension because he had a great season, but he got hurt that season and then hasn't been the same player since he returned. Ed Oliver ate the first year after getting a contract, but then regressed mightily last year. You just gave AJ Epineza a contract extension because you were hoping he was going to take a leap with more playing time. Instead, we saw the same production out of him last year, and it was not really that great of a season. It was an average at best season. Greg Rousseau had a good year, but he's not going to ever be that 13, 14 sack guy. He is a cleaner upper who needs other people to really generate the pass rush, and then he cleans it up when the quarterback moves in the pocket. Yeah,
and his strength's really a run defender too.
Yes.
So really, if you don't want Greg Rousseau to be your premier edge rusher, you want somebody else across from him to be the premier edge rusher, and then him to feast off of some of that stuff that person produces. So what I struggle with is, I'm not saying any of this to say I told you so or anything, but there was a lot of people that were really high on the Bills' defensive line last year. A lot of people that are a lot smarter than me.
I'm not smarter than you, but I was very high on the defensive line.
We all know what I'm saying. There's a lot of intelligent people that cover the Bills that are content creators that were all about this Bills defensive line last year. So it wasn't that people didn't think they didn't have talent. They just have not come to fruition. And I think the struggle that you really have is, what do you do? What can they do to really change that? I don't think picking someone at pick 30 is suddenly going to be, oh my God, we're going to deliver in the playoffs next year. Picking near pick 30 is like drafting Greg Rousseau. Guy might have a high upside, but what if he just turns out to be an average player? What if it takes 2 to 3 years to develop? I don't need projects right now. I need proven commodities. I look at this Bills roster. I like the offensive line. Even with the people complaining about Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, they're fine at tight end. The Bills don't need to make a major move at tight end. And yes, receiver, they can use some help, but you look at the rest of the team, there's one major, huge flaw. It's they don't have pass rushers. They can't get to the quarterback. And that's why I think last year I give the defense a pass. Because earlier in McDermott's time in Buffalo, they would have premier defenses. They had premier talent. And when they fell short in the playoffs, it was disappointing because you had high expectations that their defense would be able to get the job done in a good matchup. The last year, this defense was horrible. If we're going to be actual talent, we all talk up Terrell Bernard. He was one of the lowest graded linebackers in the NFL. Now, do I think he's one of the worst linebackers in the NFL? No. But is he a top 25 percentile linebacker? I don't agree with that. I don't think so. I don't think Matt Milano is anywhere close to that. I don't think Dorian Williams is anywhere close to that at this point. Safety-wise, Taylor Rapp is okay. Damar Hamlin, he'd be a backup on most teams in the NFL. Cornerback-wise, Like Benford and Taron Johnson are good, but outside of that, it's very limited. And then it was supposed to get done because this defensive line was supposed to generate pressure, and they didn't generate any. So the reason I'm all in, and I'm sorry for the long-winded answer, is a Myles Garrett or a Max Crosby or a Jonathan Allen. They instantly give you something that you have lacked or you do lack. It gives you a game record. And I've always said the tough thing about Kansas City in the playoffs, even when their defense wasn't what it was like couple years ago, is that when you have Chris Jones, even if you have the 17th ranked defense or the 20th ranked defense, on any given play, any given moment, he can get in the backfield, create pressure, get a strip fumble, get pressure, force a quick throw into double coverage or a tight window, and you get a takeaway, you get a turnover. The Bills need that person that can step up when the moment is at its biggest. And Von Miller was supposed to be that guy, but he's past his prime. And they don't have anyone else on the defense that you can look at and say, hey, this is the moment we need you to do something. They don't have one guy, and maybe Benford will be that guy. But you know what helps Benford be that guy? An actual defensive line forcing quarterbacks into bad decisions.
That's a fact. I mean, one thing that I look at with the Eagles and Howie Roseman that he did is they consistently in the draft, of course, they took into factor their needs, but they were a consistent drafting best player available at each position. I mean, look at Jalen Carter. He fell some off the field issues. For the most part, I believe those have been cleaned up. He's an absolute beast. He's starting to really come into a heck of a football player on the defensive line. They just have guys, they roll in. Like you said, Jake, line changes of defensive linemen. Mike, you brought it up, though. Like, if the window's right now, and it's been right now. So the talent on the defense lacked last year. I thought compared to the talent, I thought they did a good job. I thought it wasn't anything spectacular, but what you were given was an average talent defense, and you got a slightly above average statistical defense. So to me, I would love to get a guy who's for now. You guys brought up Crosby, Garrett, obviously Allen. So it all depends on the asking price. I would love to keep that first round pick. There's going to be a good player available. Like, you look at the D line, I believe it was 22 people, the defensive line or something like that, were invited to the combine compared to like last year's 11. So the group this year is levels above a year ago. So that's a great opportunity for you can get guys in the second, third, fourth round who still have plenty of potential, who can help your team out now. But your primary focus is going to have to be on getting over the hump here with the defensive line, because if there's one thing that we've learned in games that the Bills lose in the playoffs, it's because their defensive line cannot get consistent pressure. So I love Epinesa. I love Greg Rousseau. I just don't know if those are going to be specific guys that can be a number one edge rusher in the league. And what we've seen so far is no, the Bills love rotating, but if you can have a guy like, you look at a team like the Chiefs and Chris Jones, they're able to just do so many things well because of him, although they don't have that much talent. So I think we're a very similar defense to them. If you can get a guy, like any of the three that I just mentioned, I think you're going to be in really good shape. If not, though, you better try to load up in the draft and hope that this is the year that you can finally start hitting on those, because I sure know Boogie Basham was not what they anticipated in the second round. And AJ Epinesa, although he's been serviceable, really was not what they were hoping for, especially after that extension. So we'll see. I would love to see best player available. Hopefully that's a defensive lineman if you stay in that first round 30th overall pick spot. But right now, I think Bean put it right, or phrased it completely right, that he's not afraid to make any moves. We saw some big moves from him in the past when he claimed money was an issue. So you never really know with him. I think that's the fun part about him. So I'm excited to see what he does, and I do have faith in him. So he's going to go down swinging, though, which is always a good thing.
I'll say this. I think Bean does want to make a move.
He
for
does.
Sure. I don't know if he will. It depends on the price. I think in Bean's perfect world, what he does is if he could get like a guy like Max Crosby without giving up a first-round pick, he does that. Then he double dips by getting another defensive lineman in the first round, and then you can build around with wide receiver, corner, whatever, another parts of the draft and free agency. If there's an opportunity that presents itself for like a Myles Garrett where you give up 2 first-round picks, that's where you have that challenge of, okay, is Myles Garrett going to give – and I'm not even saying this is going to happen, but does he give me enough impact, big moment, playmaking ability to where I can forego first-round picks the next 2 years and still have enough talent surrounding Josh Allen to where we're not going to have – major repercussions about it. And I'll put it like this. Like we always say, oh, well, these first round picks, like they're so important and valuable. If you look at Keon Coleman as a first round pick, because he was the first pick of the second round, and Dalton Kincaid the last 2 years, what if the Bills really gained from those 2 picks at this point in time? They basically have, and I'm not saying they won't be high level impact players at some point, but at this point in time, they haven't generated much to the Bills' actual success. I'm not trying to like reduce Kincaid, but like to what we thought we were going to get from him. And then you add higher Elam to the equation. You're talking about like 3 of the last 4 first-round picks have not really generated much high impact for the Bills. So when you look at it, we're kind of at a little bit of a talent deficit because we're already picking late in the first round where a lot of these guys don't have the first-round grades as it is. And then on top of it, you're not hitting at a high level on those guys. So what are the Bills really made up of? They're made up of a lot of mid-round picks, third rounders, fourth rounders, guys like that, and outside acquisitions that are good depth pieces. They play their roles. But this is actually why I always said I kind of have belief in the Bills coaching staff, because I think outside of Josh Allen, it's mostly a mid-tier roster that the coaching staff gets better results than what their actual talent is. But if you could give them some game wreckers in addition to what they have, that I think can be the difference. A lot of like talent evaluators will say that your success in the NFL is as much a product of your environment as it is your talent. So let's be real. Like what the Bills need is that 10% guy at the top, that it doesn't matter where they play. They're just going to dominate wherever they go. That's what the Bills need on this defensive line.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. And I think you guys both made a lot of great points. And Carson, we've talked about this a lot, honestly.
Yes. Yes, we have.
Jimmy's and Joe's and X's and O's. Like that's what it came down to why the Bills lost. And you said it too, Mike, like with the Chris Jones factor. The Bills have not had a guy, and you're not going to find a guy opposite of Josh Allen on the defensive line or defensive side of the ball. Like to just go out and get that guy who's the same level of game. It's just not. Maybe Myles Garrett's the closest thing to it, right? The Garrett negotiations, I think. I don't anticipate Garrett going somewhere he wants. He just signed that deal. It's going to be expensive. I think he will get moved. I think it's for more of a team looking to contend than a current contender at the moment, unless the Eagles really do pony up. I do want to go back to the Eagles, who they got that. I mean, they got the Jalen Carter thing because of they were maneuvering in the draft. I mean, they were trading around, moving picks. They traded back. They traded back in the draft with the Saints. The Saints gave them a first next year to go up and get Chris Olave, which is a hilarious trade in retrospect. And so then the Eagles had 2 picks the next year. They had the number 10 pick and they had the number 30 pick, and they moved up to that one spot. They get Jalen Carter because they had a top 10 pick. They were a Super Bowl team who had a top 10 pick. They're like, fuck it, we'll take a swing here. But that's the point here is you're the Bills. You don't have that option if you're Brandon Beane. And you guys are exactly right. And I like I appreciate the comment. John's in here and he's thinking he's on Kenneth Grant. He's mentioned Kenneth Grant a couple of times. I love Kenneth Grant. We are, if we're talking about combine guys that I want to see, I'll be locked in Thursday to watch the big boys running their gauntlets and seeing how that guy moves. Like if they just to go to draft, it's either him or the guy that Mel Kiper, like a Jahdae Barron at the corner position. If they like, there are guys that I think are going to be good pros that they could get at 30. Sure. But the point Mike Bundt here is trying to make is that do you Bills fans really have the patience and time to see if they pan out, or would you rather see a Pro Bowler on the roster on day one? And I think that's where Brandon Beane's at too. I think Beane we talked about this before. This is the most consequential offseason in Brandon Beane's career. He is the one feeling the pressure. Last year, we were having all our conversations about McDermott and all this other nonsense about McDermott throughout the whole season, right? And all the onus was focused on him. Now it's Beane. Like, I think Beane should be getting more like vitriol than McDermott ever got last year for the situation we're in. For the first pick situation that you mentioned, we have 3 guys on this team. Kincaid, a lot of injuries. They've made a lot of excuses for him this offseason, though, between Allen, Beane, and McDermott with those injuries. That's a guy who before the season, we're like, that's wide receiver 1. We have Dalton Kincaid. That was a popular sentiment among Bills fans. So that's a major disappointment. I don't care what people say to me. I will go with this argument to the death. If you want to talk about the Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy thing, and you're happy with it sitting here on February 25th, by all means, you be happy with it. I'm not happy with Keon Coleman. They're not happy with Keon Coleman. If you listen to Sean McDermott yesterday, said he needs a good summer of work, and that they said before they were disappointed in what he looked like coming back from the injury. Is that a work ethic thing? Did he not work hard enough to come back? Is that why they're harping on how much work he's going to put in the summer? That's a concerning thing if that's 2 things they're mentioning that. And Elam's just been a bust. And Elam's, I mean, like, I don't have any hope for Kaiir Elam to be a productive NFL player in his career at this point. He's given us no signs to show that. And I know there's still some people out there holding out hope. Well, maybe he's in a different system. This system isn't right for him. He's never gotten a chance. Well, this team would have played him if he was good enough. Like, bar none. They've done that with everybody. Like, Cam Lewis and Jamarcus Ingram wouldn't be getting opportunities ahead of Kaiir Elam if he was outplaying him on the field. So they need talent. You are right, Mike. You're right, Carson. Like, they're at a talent deficit. That is the difference between. If you want to talk about the difference between them and the Chiefs, they don't have as much talent defensively as the Chiefs do. Trent McDuffie is better than Christian Benford. Chris Jones is better than any defensive player they have.
Sure.
They don't have that strength. And it is funny because it is something they used to be able to lean on in the past, and it's not so much anymore, which it shows how amazing it really does. When we started breaking down the roster after the season, and I'm sure we all did this, we're looking at the roster, we're looking at construction, we're seeing where the areas to prove, and you look at that defense, and I'm like, I could get a player. I could want to sign a free agent or draft a guy in the first round at literally every single position on the defense. That's counting linebacker, which everybody's beautiful baby boy linebackers, Bernard and Milano. Like you said, Mike, I'm not as high on them going into this year. I don't think they're a star duo in the league. I don't think any executives would pick them as a top 2 duo in the league or a top 5 duo.
I don't think
maybe not even top 10.
Top 10. They might not be a top 15.
That's what I mean. Like, this is what, like, and that's no shame.
20. And like, I don't even know if people would say they're a top 20 linebacker duo. Like, let's be real. Like, the only people in Buffalo, the only people that think that's a top linebacker duo are people in Buffalo.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when it comes to Bernard. I think we see the value for Bernard from his leadership and from the quarterbacking of the defense that he does, because he does have a lot of responsibilities out there. Like, he is Sean McDermott on the field. I can't even imagine what his headset sounds like before it turns off on the field. Like, it's got to be crazy, all the information that he's sending out to everybody. But he's a limited player and he's smaller at the linebacker position. Like, he's not what you would call a prototypical star linebacker when you look around the league. It just is what it is. The Bills need talent. They need talent at a lot of positions, but specifically the defensive side of the ball. They were a historically great offense. While I think they need to add at the wide receiver position to keep that up, yes. But the first and foremost focus needs to be adding talent to the defense, and for all the reasons we've outlined, I think we're all kind of on the same line, on the same thought, same page. Like, whatever they need to do to get a really talented guy. Carson, I know you got to go in a minute. Do you have any last words? And then Mike and I will wrap up here.
Yeah, I'd just say, I'm not sure how many more shows we're going to do before the draft and everything like that, but it's gonna be fun. I'm excited to see what Beane does as far as the needs go. We talked about D-line a lot this year. I will say, though, that Bernard and Milano, along with Williams, I think that's the least of our issues right now defensively. I think safety is definitely an area you could upgrade. Corner is a spot. I don't know if they're going to bring Douglas back this year. So I think there's definitely going to be areas of upgrade. They have to be more talented. They got to be better on defense. No doubt about that in all facets. Offensively, I was a little bit shocked by the Keon Coleman comments. to me, that's the only time that really come out of McDermott's mouth and stuff like that is when there's been questions about work ethic. So I don't know. Remember, he did get, that first half against Jacksonville, I believe, he has sit out. He's just got to learn. I'm not that concerned about it, but that did interest me because you very rarely hear, McDermott and company talk about, let alone a first-round pick a year ago like that. So we'll have to see. Wide receiver, they're going to at least bring in a few guys. The quality of that, though, to be determined. So I'm excited for it. I think Brendan Bean, he knows this is a big offseason, just how he's speaking. So we'll see what they do with restructures, releases, anybody like that to create some cap space because that's always an issue when you're good. So it's going to be interesting.
You're muted.
Oh, Jake. Who's bugging me about the mic now?
Button. Look at these buttons. You just hit the damn buttons. And I'm looking on here. I'm like, what are you talking about, Mike? I don't got no mute thing next to me. Carson, thank you. We'll be in touch as we get close to the draft. We're going to let Carson go do, I don't know. He probably doesn't even have to do nothing. I'm kicking him out, though. He doesn't even see you later, Carson. He's probably lying to us. He's probably just like, I don't want to talk to these guys anymore or whatever. Nah, Carson, thank you. Shout out, Carson. Appreciate him hopping on as always. Mike and I are going to finish up here. We're in the last little bit home stretch here. Yeah, man, I'm worried. I'm worried by those comments about Keon Coleman. Just to wrap up, I really didn't like hearing that from Sean McDermott. And it is crazy because I think the biggest thing we talk about with Khalil Shakir, bringing this full circle. Shakir gets that contract, and the reason he's a good NFL player is because that guy's a dog and clearly has put in work every single year to get better at his craft. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we get McDermott out there talking about work ethic and all this stuff about a receiver, and then the next day the guy who we know is one of the hardest working players on this team gets rewarded and paid. Like, Keon, if you're paying attention at all right now, like, ears open, eyes open, because these are messages sent your way. Like, good things will happen if you work hard. The results will come with this team. Whether he can replicate that, we'll see. But going into the season, would I want Keon Coleman in a role where we have to depend on him? I don't think so. I don't think I would put him in a wide receiver 2 or 3 role this year, or wide receiver 1 or 2 role this year. I think it would be better to have him kind of in the same vein he had this year, but getting a guy like Cooper or whoever else that other receiver is going to be slotted ahead of him for the season if you want to win next year. And then if he surprises, awesome. If he gets better, awesome. Now you got options. Now you got weapons all over. But I don't know if you can bank on him. And I think the Bills are I think McDermott at least is kind of saying that quiet part out loud on Monday, where like, we're not going to count on this guy to be the contributor. And maybe I'm taking too much out of that, but it was harsh words, and it's not something we hear about players a lot from him.
I'm just going to be real, man. I don't really care one thing that they said during.
That's fair.
Pressers at all. I don't know. It's tough for me to really take a lot of value because a lot of times they don't follow through with any of the stuff that they say in those. This is the way I look at Keon. Bills fans before the draft didn't want him because they knew he wasn't a separator. They knew he was a little bit slower, and I was fine with him. I liked his athleticism. I liked his ability to do things with the ball in his hands and go up and catch the ball. Was he my first option? Nowhere even close. I had like 4 or 5 guys I wanted ahead of Keon Coleman, but I never looked at Keon Coleman as like, this guy's going to be a star in the NFL. I looked at Keon Coleman as like, he's going to be a good number 2 receiver in the league. And in 13 games, he had around 550 yards and averaged 19 yards per reception. And if he would have played a full season, he would have had around 700 yards if he wasn't hurt.
That's pretty good.
That's really damn good as a rookie, especially not a top tier wide receiver rookie. So I struggle with it, man. I really do struggle with it because I think it's an expectations game. A lot of the same people that are mad about Keon Coleman's production are people that didn't even want him in the first place. And I predicted before last year, Coleman would have between 30 to 35 catches for around 500 yards.
Yep.
He surpassed it. the Bills drafted him because they thought they needed a physical receiver that could give Josh a couple easy buttons. And for the most part, that's what he does provide. Maybe he could be a little bit better in some of those situations, but like I don't think there was much that really surprised me about Keon Coleman last year. The more disappointing thing is when you see like Xavier Worthy making explosive plays against you in the AFC Championship, but then at the same point, Xavier Worthy had almost double the catches as Keon Coleman and barely more yards.
Yeah.
So what did Xavier Worthy really do as a rookie? He didn't really do much. He really didn't, but he stepped up in the playoffs when it matters. And that's why people have that taste, because he did it against the Bills. What I think really what's tough for me is this. We look at picks like Kincaid and Coleman. We say that they're not good picks because we haven't seen the individual production. But the Bills have had the number 2 scoring offense in the NFL last year and averaged 30 points a game. So
then let me present this to you, Mike, because this is not me disagreeing with you, but I'm trying to like think big picture of how we look at this then. Do we, you and I, people that follow this team, need to parse through this further? Because if you have Josh Allen, maybe you and I could be out there at receiver and they'll have a top 5
That's not true though, because last year they were 4 points less per game. They went from 26 points per game in 2023 to 30 points.
That stretch at the end of the year, though, was like 30 points per game when Brady took over, I believe. I think it was close to 30 points.
What I'm saying is last year was probably the most dominant the Bills' offense has been based on what the rest of the league is that they've had in the Josh Allen era. Like the other years when the Bills were scoring like close to 30 points a game with Dable, the whole rest of the league was scoring like 28 points.
That's true. That's true.
Last year, that wasn't the case. Kansas City's been averaging like 22 points a game the last couple of years, and the Bills are scoring 30.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't want to hate on the pick because I don't think the Bills – see, you know what the difference between the Bills and a lot of these other organizations? I don't think the Bills internally give a crap if Keon Coleman gets 1,000 yards or if he gets 500 yards, as long as he does his role and it lets the offense execute the way they need to. Fans are looking at the stats. I don't think the Bills are looking at the stats. So if the Bills are upset internally about something about Keon Coleman, I don't think they're upset that, oh my God, he only had 550 yards. I think it's something mindset related or something else like that we're not seeing on the field.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Do I think the Bills need another receiver? Yes, but I always thought they needed another receiver.
Same.
What I think the Bills ultimately decided with Keon Coleman was I think the Bills looked at the draft class last year and they saw Xavier Worthy and they're like, this guy isn't a number 1 receiver. Like, yes, he's good. He's really fast. But does that help our team right now compete for a Super Bowl? I think their answer was no. So I think they made a decision. Do we go after an explosive guy? Do we go after a contested catch guy? Do we go after what do we need? Because this person isn't going to be our number 1 receiver. This person's likely not going to be our number 2 receiver. What skill set do we need for the next 4 to 5 years for Josh Allen? I think they looked at Coleman and they're like, this skill set is tough to find. We can find another fast person to be Xavier Worthy. We can find another slot receiver in the league if we need another slot receiver. So at the end, it's how many guys offer the Coleman skill set at a high level? Probably not a ton. So they decided to go with it. I was fine with the pick because I understood what they were looking for. We always talked about the basketball lineup, guys doing different roles. So we can't be comparing him to Xavier Worthy, like because they're 2 totally different.
But now they are talking about this summer wanting a speedster.
You know what the problem with those type of comparisons are? They lack context and they lack what these players would be in Buffalo. What's Xavier Worthy doing in Buffalo? What if Xavier Worthy as a rookie goes for 200 yards in Buffalo and gets 10, 15 catches?
It's true. But they are looking for a speedster this offseason. They've talked about wanting to stretch.
Last offseason, that wasn't what they were building towards. Last offseason, they wanted a physical team that could run the ball, that could go up and make grabs. And it led them to 30 points a game. So we can't be having this fantasy football.
Now, hold on. I'm not going to say that Keon Coleman led them to 30 points per game, but I understand what you're saying. Like the role that he played.
But look at it like this, Jake.
But Matt Collins did a lot of the same
I'm not
things
saying Keon Coleman, but Bills fans were complaining about Matt Collins the whole first half
I agree.
of the season.
Yeah.
And then the dude comes likes it up. This ain't fantasy football. Like, it's a collection of guys. Do you know what WGR was talking about all at the end of the 2023 season, going into the 24 offseason, then the start of the 24 season? We better not be a running team this year because we can't run the ball like that. You have Josh Allen. You have a freak quarterback. You need to pass the ball as much as possible. And you know what happened? The game Josh Allen threw for over 30 against Houston, he completed 10 passes and 33% of them or whatever, something like that. And the Bills got their offense sucked the whole game. Josh Allen just won an MVP. The Bills just had their best offensive output in decades. And you know what it was built on? A game manager quarterback with a good running game. So I don't care what Bills fans think they need. A
game manager who won MVP.
I don't care what the local Buffalo media thinks the Bills need, because you know what? They're wrong more often than they're right.
That's true.
You know what? Those same people are the people that thought that Bo Byram for Casey Middleton was a horrible trade in hockey. Well, they were wrong with that. They thought Savoy for McLeod was a horrible trade. Wrong about that. They thought Jason Zucker was an overpay. Wrong about that. I'm done just like, we're sports fans. We have opinions. We're going to be right sometimes. We're going to be wrong sometimes. But what the
have
Bills,
your own opinion, people.
Have
your own opinion.
Stop group thinking. Like, the media isn't some sports expert. Like, they're not. They don't know every little thing about running a team. Know who I trust? The people that have had 5 straight AFC East championships, that have won 11 plus games every one of those seasons, that have been working in professional football for the last 25 years.
Yeah.
And what did you hear Gronk and Edelman say the other day in that video? They were talking about Sean McDermott. So I'll say this. Does Brandon Beane need to hit at a higher percentage of his first round picks? Yes. Do the Bills have a talent deficit? Yes. But you go through flows in your franchise. Early on in Josh Allen's career, when he was on a rookie deal, the Bills had elite talent. They didn't capitalize, but we knew it was going to be a 3-4 year project, and ended up being a 2-year project. He got good a lot sooner than we all expected. Then they give him the big money. Some of our veterans get older, and then we try to build this youth. Well, know what? Now we got a little bit of cap room. We don't have a ton of cap room, but we have a little bit of cap room to play with. Brandon Beane, every few years, goes for that swing. He went for Diggs in 2020. He went for Von Miller 3 years ago in 2022. Wasn't able to do it last year because of the cap situation. I think he wants to take a swing right now. And I'll put it like this. If the Bills had Max Crosby or a Myles Garrett on their team last year, do you think they beat the Chiefs in the playoffs?
Yes.
I think they probably do. Know why? Because the Bills were taking...
They lost by 3 points.
Yeah, the Bills lost by 3 points, and they just couldn't get a stop in any moment.
Yep.
Getting one of those guys, it might not... Your defense still might allow 28 points against the Chiefs in the playoffs. But if you get that one extra stop in the second quarter, maybe you lead by 7 points. So then the Chiefs are playing from behind. It's not about just getting that stop late in the game like the defense did on the final.
It's at any point in the game.
It's at any point in the game.
Yeah.
And that's why I think they need a swing. And anybody saying Myles Garrett or is like a Von Miller signing, that is nowhere close.
Myles Garrett is literally the most productive pass rusher through age
29 years old. He's
history.
like prime Bruce Smith.
Yes.
While Von Miller was 33, who had already torn his ACL once. And yes, I loved the signing. But once he tore his ACL a second time, that's when it was an issue. But we'll see how it all plays out. There's a lot of time. There's a lot of different routes that they can go. And I have confidence that this team is going to be in a position to take a leap next year after this offseason.
Agreed, man. I'm playing like straw man here with you about Keon Coleman more than anything. I'm not a hater of the pick. I understand the reason behind it, everything else, whatever. I'm a little more concerned with the way they used it than you are with the press conferences. But I know you don't take stock into these offseason press conferences at all. I'm personally trying to. I'm not taking their words at face. I'm never taking. First of all, don't ever take a head coach's or GM's word at face value. Always look for between the ulterior motive. I just thought him even bringing that up was the concerning part. Not really what he said or how he said it, but just like, oh, okay.
There could be something else going on that
for sure.
It could be as simple as, okay, Keon, we need you to step it up this offseason. Maybe this motivates him in some way to go into the offseason with more passion. Or he could be completely honest, and maybe he does have some issues with how Keon Coleman produced as a rookie. But you know what? We go through these cycles too often where we give up on these players, or we harp on them too much. Like if you would have judged Khalil Shakir based on his rookie year, you would have been a fool. Like I remember people going to Khalil Shakir's second year saying he was about to be a nobody. And now after his third year, he gets this nice extension. So I think that the general point is let's be a little bit, when I say patient, I'm not talking about with the team and our expectation to win. Like right now they're in a prime Super Bowl window. We should be holding them accountable to try to win championships. But let's be a little bit more patient when it comes to making observations about individual players after one season. Like there's a lot of ups and downs throughout your career, throughout seasons. And in 1 year is a pretty quick time to make wide big time observations. You mess up 2 years, mess up 3 years, like Kaiir Elam. Okay, I'm fine holding you accountable. 1 year, it's still pretty early.
Learning to be a pro is hard, man. Being a pro is a hard adjustment more than anything. Keon Coleman was 21 years old last year. Like this was a young guy even coming out too. So like there's a lot of, maybe it's just life lessons. Like and the thing you said, maybe it's McDermott motivating him. McDermott knows how to motivate each and every one of these guys. That's your job as a head coach, is to figure out, is not just to motivate your guys, but figure out what levers and what buttons you have to push to get the most out of them. Maybe he knows Keon needs a little jostle in the media. He needs to see that come across his timeline and get mad about that. He's 21. He's a Zoomer. Like he's going to see that. He's going to see these clips go up and be like, oh shit, coach is talking about me. So maybe that's the way he's just trying to reach him, and that's it as much as anything else. I'm going to leave it with this, and then we can go. I'll give you your final thoughts, and we'll go from there. Fuck them picks. That's where I'm at. I am at full on. Keon could be a very good pro. If they would have traded that, I don't even know who could have been a trade for last year, wide receiver wise or whatever else. They traded up for Brian Thomas. Are they in the Super Bowl this year? I don't know. I'm not here to relitigate past draft decisions, whether they should have traded one of these late picks for a guy. I'm here to talk about going forward. We've talked at length on this show that this team needs an infusion of top tier, ready-made NFL talent. And I think we saw a team who thought the same thing a couple of years ago and sent it. And it was the Los Angeles Rams, and they won a Super Bowl out of it. And they had like 1 year where they really had to take their medicine on things, and they're back and they reloaded on the defensive line and everything else when they had their picks last year. Think that we got to start going, as you said, we are going into age. Josh is turning 29 this year. It's time. Like you said, we can't plan for 31, 32, 33-year-old Josh. Now is the time. Now is when you actually push all the chips in. Von Miller wasn't pushing all the chips in. The Von Miller move was, let's push a lot of chips in and see what we can do. Now is the time. If Brandon Beane was ever going to push all of them in, it's today. It's this draft. It's this free agency. It's right now. We've talked about the opportunities there are to address it. Let's see what they do. But we'll be back next week to talk combine. We didn't talk any combine today. I just love watching the drills. I love watching, and I like seeing how athletic guys truly are. I think I don't know if there's a lot you can take from the combine, but you can tell guys that look like, okay, that's a freak athlete, like not worried about him, and guys who are like, what that little worried about that, how that translates over. It's not always perfect, and there's not a lot for a person like me just watching at home to gather. But it's fun, and we'll get a lot of intel over the next couple of days, whether it be the Bills or just around the league in general. As I said, GMs, coaches are all there. They're all at dinner together. They're seeing each other. They're having little trade conversations on the sidelines. It's like this is where these things happen. So we're going to get a lot coming out of this. Free agency, the tampering period starts March 10th. So we are less than 2 weeks away from free agency. So the league's going to be flipped upside down on its head. The NFL's offseason really never stops. Combine coming up. We're like, Super Bowl feels like it was a year ago. It was like 2 weeks ago. I'm ready to go, Mike.
Yeah, I can't wait to The offseason is always fun in the NFL. There's no breaks, and there's a lot that's going to happen in the next month or two that's going to change the Bills' future going forward. We all hope that they make the right moves and they build this team in the right direction. And that's what the fun thing about this is. We all have opinions, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. So I can't wait, and we're going to have a lot of good shows to come up in the next couple weeks and months going forward.
Yes, sir. So keep locked here to Trainwreck Sports for all the Bills coverage going forward. Shout out to our comment section, Joey, John, and Chill Will, who are in here commenting the whole time. We appreciate you. And always, anybody, feel free to comment. We want this to be as interactive as possible. We love y'all. Thank you for tuning in to the Pay the Bill. We've paid the bills. Thank you for tuning in to the Pay the Bills podcast here on Trainwreck Sports. For Mike Bundt, this is Jake Michael. We'll be back next Tuesday talking combine, previewing free agency, and whatever other crazy. There's going to be like 3 other Bills stories that happened during the week that we'll be able to touch on. So we didn't even talk about James Cook today. They're gonna pay James Cook though. That's my ultimate belief at this point. But we'll get into it next week. Maybe he'll be a Bill for life after next week. We'll see. But shout out Picasso's Pizza, our sponsor. Thank you all. Have a great night. Go Bills.